Hey everyone, welcome to low poly introductions. We're going to be making a low poly for some assets here. So we're going to start off with this crate that I've modeled. This is my high poly crate that I have. Um, and we're going to build a low poly. Now the low poly has a couple of uses. Number one, we're going to use it to bake out the normal maps and other textures out of there. And number two, it's going to actually be our in-game model because obviously this guy is going to be way too heavy for what he is once he's like turbo smooth and all that. So we can't use that, especially floaters and all that kind of thing, kinds of things. So let's get started with something simple like this crate, something very boxy with very big shapes. I'm probably just going to build my mesh from scratch. I'm not going to bother using too much of the low poly stuff that I've made for this. I can if I want to, but sometimes it's just nice to kind of start fresh and have a nice clean model because cleanliness is key for low poly. You don't want anything really ugly. You want some nice edge flow and all that kind of stuff. So what are your goals with low poly? Well, basically anything you see in your mesh that affects the silhouette um, of, um, of it should get modeled out in your low poly. And any sort of face details like this little indent here, this little guy, these things, even these big cutouts in here, I'm never going to see these things at an angle where I can't tell that they're flat, that they're kind of painted. Like, yeah, perspective will do some stuff, but, we can get away with that. Anything that kind of breaks up the edge, to a certain degree. I mean, it's up to you if you want to do like this little thing in there or whatever. But any of these bigger elements that you could actually see breaking up the edge from different angles, you want to model that stuff out. So let's begin. So usually what I do is I'll just start with a box. All right, so first thing I'll do is I'll just align my box to, let's say, the base of the mesh. My mesh isn't all attached. Sometimes I'll attach my high poly all together, but sometimes that slows my machine down, so I don't do that. And convert this guy to an editable poly, select these faces here, and let's just start modeling the base of this crate right now. So, see, my first goal really here is just to kind of encompass this bottom part here, and I'll worry about the top parts later. So I want to make sure that my low poly fully covers it up. Now, this is not obviously good because we have different corners and stuff like that. You want to match your corners and your faces as best as you can. Right, so okay, it's not very flat for some reason. There we go. Now, if you want to see what your high poly looks like underneath, you can click Alt-X on your mesh and it'll make it see-through, so you'll kind of get to see what your stuff is looking like. Well, this, obviously this right now is not acceptable. It does not follow my silhouette of my mesh very well, and this would capture really weird because basically what you're doing is you're taking each of the faces that's going to be on your low poly, and we're going to be capturing what they see from their specific normal. So if we caught this guy here, we would get all this detail, but we'd also get all this empty space around here, which doesn't exist. So then we'd get, kind of like black lines over here, and then same thing for over here. If we looked at it straight on, yeah, we'd get some nice detail, but then we get all this like empty space in there, and that corner would get empty space, and it would look really ugly, and then same with the top. So, definitely not ready yet. So let's ring this. I'm going to chamfer these guys until they, oh yeah, not that one. Until I get that. And I can tell the base of my crate was not perfectly flat, so I may have to do a little bit of manual adjusting, which is okay. Um, all depends what you're making. So again, this is the kind of basic way of making low poly, really good for simple things like, crates and a lot of the kind of sci-fi stuff that we've been doing in class. Really nice for that. Obviously, if you're doing a character or something a little bit more complex, there's better ways about making low polys, and we will cover those in the next lesson. All right, so we got that pretty down pat. I'm going to chamfer this top part here until I get an approximate kind of angle there. And now I'm going to chamfer, let's take a look, yeah, just the corners here. There we go. So maybe this is a little, did I go too low with this? Oh no, there's another chamfer there. So what I might actually do is move this guy to the top. I undid my chamfers that I did there and do them right now. That way I'll have less adjustments to do. There we go. And I will select that bottom face, extrude it once more. And then depending on where these guys are, looks like it's all chamfered in there. I can use my outline tool to uniformly scale it down until at least some of the things line up. You may never get everything to fully line up, which is fine. You may have to just manually adjust some stuff. Right. A little bit like that. All right, there we go. Pull this one. Let's see, these guys do not look very good there, so make sure it all lines up. All right. There we go. We got our bottom part here finished. Now, for the second part, I can do two things. I can start with a brand new box and then model this upper chunk there. But right now I have this face right here, and it is a giant face. And really the only parts we're going to be seeing is this little edge right here. So if I leave this face as it is, yes, it'll be lower poly than insetting it and doing some stuff, but that's a lot of wasted texture space. When we unwrap things eventually to capture our normals, every single face on your low poly needs its own unique part of the little square that we unwrap to. And when you have something this big, you're going to be wasting a lot of space on something that's probably just going to render out black because it's not going to get any detail. So in cases like this, you actually want to either model things together or find ways to optimize your low poly. And it's not really a poly count issue. It's more of a texture space issue. Don't waste your texture space, right? I mean, we want to bake out a small texture, as as small as the game needs it to be. Again, it all depends on what kind of game you're making. If you're making a mobile game and you are baking out, custom textures, then you're definitely going to want them to be nice, small, and optimized. If you're working on something bananas like Uncharted, well, your textures are going to be pretty high res. But either way, you're still not going to want to waste any texture space because resolution is what is going to make this thing look really badass. When you're working on a portfolio, you could just kind of go to town and we can bake this thing at a ridiculous resolution, but you still want it to be realistic. If you are going to be applying with, with these models, potential employers may want to look at your, oh, I forgot to do this one. May want to look at your low polys and your unwraps, and if they see that you're wasting space and not really following, kind of industry standards as far as modeling goes, then it's not going to look very good on you. So keep in mind, model and do your stuff for your needs. If you're just modeling for fun, just to learn and do stuff, and it's not going to be in your portfolio, then well, maybe you could skip a few steps. But I typically don't like to do that because even though I've been modeling for a while, practice makes perfect, and never too experienced or too old to just follow the rules, I guess. I don't know, whatever. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. Let's just continue modeling. All right, so my low poly for this upper part is done. I extruded, chamfered. I don't even think I chamfered. Maybe I chamfered that top part. I don't even remember anymore. So I'm going to model out this top part here. I could do that in a couple ways. Really, I'm probably just going to end up doing half of this thing and symmetrying it anyways, but sometimes it's nice to work on something that's a full box like this. I'm going to connect it in the middle. I'm going to chamfer this thing outwards. Now, when you're working on your low poly stuff, you want, again, your low poly to be clean and very efficient. But while you're making cuts and modeling stuff, it's okay to be a little messy. Like if I just add a cut right here, that's fine. You know, right now it's going to make my life a lot simpler just to add these big cuts and get lines where I want them to be. And then you know, I trust myself to go through and clean this stuff up later on. Um, so, you know, don't freak out too much about your workflow, you know, what it's like while you're working on it. As long as you trust yourself to go through and, you know, clean up your stuff, then that's fine, right? So, yeah, don't worry too much. All right, so I'm just really going to be working on a quarter of this mesh, really. So I'm just going to worry about this one side here. I'm not even worrying what the other side looks like because for now it doesn't really matter. All right, so we got that guy. And I can extrude all of this out here. So I'm going to open up my extrude dialog, do a little pull down here, go to local normal so it extrudes evenly. And I'm probably going to do up to the lower part here because it's going to be easier to extrude that out later on. Scale this down, make sure it's nice and flat. We'll worry about this in a second. Right, and you know, kind of think about that in a little bit. You know, one of my choices here is, let me just get rid of this here. I have this guy here. I have these cut-ins that I did. Let's just hide this handle for now. That's why I like keeping stuff separate sometimes. I have these little cut-ins, and you know, my low poly, they don't really break the silhouette, but I know my handles have to go in here, and if they're going into just like a flat piece of texture on this mesh, it's probably not going to look that great. So I'm thinking that at this point I should probably, you know, model this stuff out. I think that might be the better way to go. All right, so I can hit Alt X and start seeing what this looks like. So, you know, I might, oops, just scale this down. You know, and just start cutting up some pieces. Right, just get that where it needs to be. And just gonna extrude this in. Sometimes I extrude just like a little bit because sometimes the dialog is too touchy. I'll just extrude a little and then, oops, and then outline. I want to match that angle there pretty well. I might just go through and hide this guy here. That's pretty good. So I might adjust a couple of these guys here. They're not quite as flat and even as I want them to be. So I might just select all this, scale it, just make sure it's nice and flat. All right, move that downward. Move this guy back here, and we'll talk about this curve in a second. All right, so that's pretty good. I'm going to have this inside step here too, but I'm going to address that in a little bit. We'll kind of talk about that. So this right here, you know, my curve right here is, you know, is fairly high poly. Definitely a lot more high poly once I do my open subdiv. So let's just take a look at that. You know, look how smooth that is. Now, sometimes you're thinking, you know, you're building your low poly and you're like, yeah, you know, this is supposed to be a low poly. It's not supposed to be really high. So, you know, curves are definitely where your poly count gets eaten up. So, you know, you're going to do some cuts and try and match your angle here. And at some point you might go to yourself, you're like, yeah, you know what? That's probably pretty good for the distance I'm going to look at it. And you're probably right, you know, if this crate is going to be this big on screen, you know, that's probably more than smooth enough. But what I find a lot of times is when you kind of cheap out on corners for your low poly, a lot of times your normal maps will bake out all this stuff, and it won't be a nice smooth kind of edge and flow along there. So a lot of times when I do my first low poly, the one just for, that we're doing now for baking our textures, I might add a few extra polygons in here and optimize it later on if I feel I need to, if my poly count's really high. But I really want that capture, that bake to be nice and smooth, right? I want it to be really, really clean. So I might go through and add, um, a few extra polygons and not really worry about the poly count of my mesh until that bake is done, and then I'll kind of go back and clean it up. So yeah, don't be afraid to make your low poly a little bit high sometimes if if you're feeling the need for it. So again, not a bad thing. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I may extrude this guy here in a little bit, maybe. I can't really leave him for normal maps because he's just straight dead on, so he's going to look really bad. So I will probably end up having to model this out. So I'm going to flatten this, go down here, right, and then just going to do some simple cuts. Same with over here. Again, don't really care that my mesh is kind of a giant mess right now. All depends. I mean, that's just me. If you are not comfortable with a messy mesh while you're working on it, then feel free to clean up as you go. Everybody's kind of got their own workflows and things. So, work as you will. All right, so we got this guy. Oh, did I just extrude that? I never extruded this bottom part. Whoops. Sometimes this happens where I just forget about things. So let's just fix that up right here. I'm going to delete this part. Going to connect this twice. There we go. And I'm just going to cap this guy down here. Oops, cut, cap. I'll just fill that in. Maybe I'll just attach those right there. So you notice I'm not even worrying about modeling this one side. I'm really modeling a quarter of my mesh because really, I mean, if it's the same, I'm just going to symmetry it. All right, throw another symmetry. Bam, done both sides. Why worry about modeling everything on every angle if it's exactly the same? So learn to save yourself some time. Don't stress out too much about having to do a whole ton of different stuff when symmetry and other things will save you some great time. So, all right, so I'm going to extrude this guy, put him down here, symmetry that over, convert this to an editable poly, and then I could just remove these symmetry lines if I feel I don't need them, which I do not right now. All right, so again, a little messy, but that's fine. All right, and last but not least, I'm going to do this inset here. So I'm actually gonna recut this right down the center like I had. I shouldn't have got rid of that with my symmetry. And I'm gonna chamfer this. Right, I'm probably gonna symmetry this thing again, so. There we go. Select these guys here. Same thing, extrude, local normal, right about there, do an outline. Beauty, there we go. Now I'm gonna just symmetry this guy over one more time. And I'm gonna deal with this inside area here, so let's hide this for now. Now, I have this this deeper cut in with this cylinder and some weird polygons over here. I think they go away eventually. Um, I could probably capture most of this as a normal, but the problem is it might not be affecting my silhouette too much. Like this cylinder kind of goes above, but that's not really a big deal. If this is for a top-down game or a three-quarter game and I'm just looking at this mesh like this, that's fine. Flat polygon, never going to see this, totally okay. If my person's going to be looking at this thing a bit of an angle, and they might actually be able to see some of this is going to look kind of weird as a flat texture, then maybe I want to model some of that out. So it's kind of up to you, you know, how much detail you want to go into. Sometimes it's okay to kind of go simple, bake your stuff out, throw it into an engine, and then run around with your character and be like, oh yeah, that looks kind of stupid, and then go back and we can remodel some stuff. So there's nothing wrong with that. So I think for now, I'm just going to leave it because I don't really care. It should still look pretty nice, and it'll be okay that way. Now make sure I save my max file because I haven't saved at all. All right, and last but not least, we have the handles here. So I've already collapsed these things down to an edible poly, but if I had my older low poly version of this from my open subdiv, I could have totally used that as my low poly, but since I don't, I'm going to have to remodel these guys. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to start with a box. I could extrude from here and kind of work from there, but these guys are kind of separate issues anyways. So let me just align this just to kind of get it centered, but no real reason. All right, convert this to an edible poly. And by converting to an edible poly now, not really aligning it that well, like my pivot's going to be really stupid, but I don't care because I'm going to have to reset my pivots at the end anyways. Right, so that guy's a bit of an angle. You know, if I really wanted to, I could just isolate these two guys and just kind of work on this on its own. And again, I'm really going to just have to work on a quarter of this mesh. It doesn't have to be, you know, the entire thing. You know, get comfortable switching between your selection types, you know, with 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you need verts, just hit 1, select your verts. If you need your edges, hit 2, select your edges, and you know, start going from there. Now, instead of using the extrude modifier, because it's going to be, or just the extrude tool, it's going to be kind of annoying. I'm going to delete this face right here, that one, on the inside. And what that's going to allow me to do is select my border. It's going to select this open border here. And I can shift drag this out and kind of extrude with it, which will allow me to pretty easily just kind of line this stuff up here. And switch to 1, move this up here, switch to 3, back to border. All right, now this one here. Always remember you have your scale tool to reflatten some things if you need to. You also have the make planar under faces. I believe edges has it too, no? I thought it had one, never mind. All right, so let's move that there. Right, move that along there. Right, extrude and move, and I don't really care where this goes right now. All right, so now I'm going to take this this guy here. I'm going to make sure he kind of fully encompasses my high poly. It doesn't have to be exact. If you're a little under, that's fine too, because you know, we're going to be setting up some cages and things like that to bake our stuff. So it doesn't have to be fully over top, but you know, the closer you can get to that, the better your results will be, and you'll kind of have an easier time. So again, not 100% mandatory, but ooh, look at that. That's weird. I screwed that up pretty good. Make sure move everything to where it needs to be. Oh, I did the whole thing there, so I forgot to move that before I started chamfering. And I'm just going to select all these, just kind of scale them down, make sure they're nice and flat. Right. Select that too. Make sure you select everything that's on the same kind of plane. All right, there we go. So with that, I'm going to select this. I'm going to go to my edit pivot section here. I'm going to go to Effect Pivot Only. It's going to allow me just to move the pivot around. And I'm going to go to my Align tool here. If you click and hold, there's one with a little lightning bolt. That's the Quick Align tool. Just let you click on another object and click on the handles there. And what that's going to do is it's going to give them the same pivot. Now, the reason I want that is now that when I symmetry these handles over, they're going to use that pivot there, and it will just go a lot smoother. So add 2 symmetries in there. Bam, symmetried over. All right, and we can remove this center symmetry line. And there we go. So now if we unhide everything, we have our handles and we have our base. And that's it. We're done our low poly. You know, we have this guy here. He's ready for capturing. Well, he's not ready for capturing. We still have to unwrap him and clean him up. But this is kind of what you should expect from a low poly. Just, you know, fully cover your mesh, match all the silhouettes really well, and kind of, you know, precisely represent your high poly without being so crazy high poly. Now, before we finish this, I'm going to take a look, and you'll see that this thing is an absolute mess. I don't even remember why I added this edge in here before. So I'm just going to go through and clean this up. So with low poly counts, the rule of thumb is really if your edges do not affect the silhouette in any way, like these guys here, they are just part of a perfectly straight line. They're just cutting up straight lines, flat faces. I don't need them. The only time you might need an edge that cuts across a line is if you need it for unwrapping or for some sort of other detail work. But other than that, you know, if we look at the silhouette before and after, right? If you can't notice the difference, then they are not necessary. So get rid of them, and then go through and try your best to, you know, add some quads. Some tries are okay if you need to. All right, we'll talk about those when we go to bake. Sometimes you may get some weird kind of geometry kind of artifacting there. So just kind of, you know, be careful. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I'm actually just going to do the same thing. I'm going to clean up just, you know, half of this. So I don't really care what happens to the other side. And be careful when you're just double clicking on these edges, because sometimes they may get rid of lines that you really need. So, you know, deselect the things you actually need, like this one. All right, we remove. And you'll notice Max is just doing a terrible job of trying to figure out where things should get connected, so you are going to have to manually kind of help it along there. Right. Don't need you. I could symmetry across the middle again, but I'm just gonna kind of work with it here. Definitely don't need that edge. He's not helping at all. That's a quad. I'll delete that. And gone. This thing is just dividing this in half for no freaking reason. Gone. And now we could attach all this. Look at all these quads everywhere. This is actually nicer than I thought. But some places you do not have quads, like this top face here. And you will be stuck with some triangles unless you force some quads by making it high poly, which may be okay in some instances. So all right, I could probably get rid of these or keep them, either way. Could connect these guys across. All right, so let's just symmetry this over. Wrong way. There we go. Don't really need this right across the center there. Although I do have some weird things there, but we will discuss whether these gigantic polygons are okay or not okay once we start baking. And we can attach this over. And just clean up, make sure your stuff has quads everywhere as best as you can, or tries. Really just try not to leave, 5, 6, 10-sided polygons like this one here. This thing is horrendous. Right, you might want to clean that up. I should have cleaned that up before I symmetried over. You can always go to my side viewport here. And just attach those. Bit of a pain in the butt, but that is okay. Sometimes that just needs to happen. There we go. All right, and we're done. So I'm going to throw a smoothing group on there just to break up the smoothing groups for now, just to kind of take a look at what it looks like, make sure it's fine. And there you have it. There's our low poly for our crate. Did not take super long because it was really simple. We will do something a little bit more complicated next, and we'll talk about some of the other issues that may occur. So stay tuned for that on the channel. Thanks.